Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times, these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
Kathy Ann Smith. I'm 62 years old. I was in the fire service from 1979 to 2009. I am originally from Greensboro, North Carolina. Yes, I am. Oh, I'm related to, I have a distant cousin that's in the fire service, Clint Smith. I assume he's still here. I haven't been in touch with him in some time, but yes, sir.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
I like him.
When I joined the fire department, it was actually by accident. I had just graduated high school. My dad had passed away when I was 17. I was an only child. My mom was a homemaker. I'd had several ball scholarships to go to college, which is what I intended to do. I wanted to be a surgeon, but I couldn't. I needed to stay home and help take care of her. She took the life insurance money, paid the house off so we'd have a place to live, and she bought a little curb market out on 29 North, which would just happen to be right down below Chief Kent's house. And Anita Strong, me and her went to junior high and high school together. And I was talking to her one day, and you know, Bobby Strong was on the fire department as well, and she said, "Hey, Dad just told me that they're going to try and start hiring women. You know, would you be interested since you're not able to go to college right now?" And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "I'll try out for it." So I tried out for it. Well, it just so happened that Chief Kent got to know my mom really well and was very excited and encouraged me to try out for it. Hard to believe because he was a big chief back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knew me from nowhere. I mean, seriously, but he encouraged it, and he said, "Yeah, we're wanting to get women involved in the fire service, so please have her try out." So I did, and I was accepted. The process when I was hired, and I don't remember a lot of it. I know we had a little bit of a physical agility test, and it was picking up hose, putting it in the back of a truck, climbing a ladder. I remember doing some kind of peg thing with holes and bolts and screws. And that was back in 1978. So to me wasn't that hard. I didn't think to get on. Of course, I was straight out of high school, so I guess you could say I was still intelligent. My starting salary, I think, was around $800 a month. Training was pretty hard, pretty rigorous. Luckily, I was young. I was 19 years old when I come on. It had its challenges. That was back during the day when you were still original smoke eater. We had the old Scott Air packs, but you didn't pick one up, or you didn't dare to. I had a really good class. I think there was 20 in my class. Actually, Bobby Nugent was in my class. Sticky Birch was in my class. Chuck Stockard. Anita Strong, we actually come on together. And then we had another female in my class, Doris Wall. The training was 15 weeks. We had to wear our own clothes. We did not have uniforms back then. I ruined a bunch of clothes, especially in that smoke lab. A bunch of clothes got ruined. But I enjoyed it. Chief Hagler was my chief, and then Captain Carmen was the training officer. And an unusual combination for them two, but I can always remember seeing Chief Hagler come across that parking lot, and we called him Little Hitler. And I could see him coming across that parking lot, his face just be blood red, because one of us done something. I'll never forget that. But it was good times. I really enjoyed training, really did. It was hot, summertime. It's serious, but I mean, we actually had a good time. I hated the palm pier ladder. I know a lot of people don't even know what that is. I hated that net and climbing that palm pier ladder. And what I think was the funniest things, all of us, every one of us, when we get on that palm pier ladder, them window sills were wore down from years and
Describe
years.
the palm pier ladder. What did
It was a long pole, had a hook on it that had teeth, and then it had little rungs, and you would take it and throw it up over the windowsill, try to get it locked in, and then you'd climb up. That's how you scaled a building back in the day. And then once you got in that windowsill, you'd straddle it, pick that palm, and that palm pier ladder was tall. I think it was probably about, I don't know, 8 or 10 feet maybe. I don't remember. And then you'd pick it up, and you'd throw it in the next window and hope the teeth would grab. And a lot of times the teeth, when you was climbing it, the teeth would shift, you know, and you'd shift. But luckily we had a net down there below us. But I think that was the one thing all of us despised, was that palm pier ladder. I was so glad when they got rid of those things. So glad.
Yeah.
Becoming a firefighter, yes, I knew that was, I didn't know beforehand, but I knew once I got in training, especially once we got through with our training, we went into our EMT training program. And it's always been my upbringing or instinct to help people. And this was the perfect job to be able to do that, versus me wanting to be a surgeon. I would have been able to done the same thing.
Wow.
But in this case, granted, I wouldn't have made as much money, but I think it's the enjoyment of the job and helping people. It's what really made a difference for me. Training was really steady. Like I said, it was 15 weeks. There were tough days. And in the beginning, it was kind of hard to be accepted because there was only 3 female out of the 20 group of 20. And I'm not going to say it was not challenging. We had our times. But I think as the training went on and we all kind of got to know each other and realized we were here to do the same job, we all had the same purpose here. It started to get a little bit easier. The guys got to be a little bit more acceptable of us because we were right there side by side with them in the training. We was right there in the smoke lab with them. We were climbing the palm pier ladder just like they were. We did every exercise training that we could possibly do side by side with all the guys. And I think that's what built a bond. It took a while. I'm not going to say it didn't. It took a while, but it eventually formed a bond with all the guys that was in my training class. My first station was Station 15. I was actually there for 9 years. My first captain, I honestly can't remember if it's because captains rotated back then. Well, I fell under several down at Station 15. I had Arnold Marion, Elton Spainhour, Charlie Saunders. Charlie Saunders was probably the most influential captain that I had down there.
Talk about that. How was Charlie Saunders?
Charlie was great. Charlie was very accepting. I come to find out that captains that I had first out in my career, if they had daughters, were a lot more accepting than they did if they didn't have daughters. And I honestly think that made a difference because I think they looked at me as, this is a challenge that you've decided to do. If my daughter decided to do this as well, I would want the doors to be open for her as well. And I think that honestly made a difference. Being accepted, it wasn't really a bad experience for me because I'm very headstrong, very determined. That was just part of my upbringing. So if I got knocked down a notch or two, I made sure I come back up another 2 or 3 notches. I mean, it's what you had to do. Back in 1979, when I first come on the line as a female firefighter to a station that had never had women firefighters in it to start with, it was challenging because, 1, the guys didn't know what to expect from me, and 2, I didn't know what to expect from them. You had your camaraderie with the training class that you was in for 15 weeks, but now you're walking into a whole different world of 24-hour shift. You know, where do you sleep? Do you eat together? You know, it was a whole new learning experience. And it was a filling out for them as well as it was for me too. But I come to find out, if you proved yourself and you did the job twice as hard, because you had to work twice as hard to get their respect. And they expected that from you. If you worked twice as hard, you would earn their respect. And eventually, throughout the years, I earned a lot of respect from a lot of the firefighters that would come up through the ranks and tell me, Kathy, I'd fight fire with you anytime. Anytime I'd fight fire with you. And that's just a reputation that you had to build by working twice as hard. I didn't get a nickname until I was on up in the years, and it was Pit Bull, because I was ferocious. Plus, part of that aspect too is I started martial arts. I was at Station 7. We'd had a fire at a crack house. And believe it or not, crack houses were around then, just not like they are now, where they're about on every street corner. But we had a working house fire at a crack house, and this guy come out of a back room, and I mean, this house is rocking. He had no shoes on, no socks. He come walking down that hallway, barefoot, burning. Didn't faze him, and he come up and grabbed me. And I'm in full turnout gear, face piece, air pack, hose line. He grabbed me, and me and him tussled out the front door. And I finally tossed him off the front porch, and thank goodness police was there, and they went ahead and arrested him. It was after that point in time that I said, probably need to do something to be a little bit more protective of myself. Now granted, the guys would have jumped in, no doubt, but we were fighting a really good house fire. So I started taking martial arts, and then I progressed throughout the years in my martial arts, became a black belt Taekwondo, and then I did kickboxing. I was an amateur kickboxer, and I did some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've done a little bit of everything, so the guys nicknamed me Pitbull. Any female that wants to be a firefighter needs to realize, first and foremost, this is a male-dominated field. It has been since the beginning of the fire service, and it probably will continue to be. This is not a job that it's going to be all women one day. That's not going to happen. You need to come in expecting to work harder. You need to come in expecting to be downgraded at some point in time. And you need to come in and expect to get up, pick up your bootstraps, whatever that saying is, continue on and do the job. I'm a firm believer if you go in there and give it 115% and you do the job, yes, it's going to take a while to be accepted, but you will be accepted, versus you're coming in expecting things to go your way like some people do, and unfortunately that does happen. But you can't come in and expect everybody to accept you from the get-go. You've got to earn your place when it comes to the fire department. Well, one, preparing for the Firefighter Combat Challenge, and that's basically what the agility test is now. Back when Greensboro Fire decided to adopt that, if I'm not mistaken, it come out of Arizona, they come to some of us on the line and ask us to go through that agility test, because they wanted to know if it would be fair. If it would be fair to women, which I appreciated the fire department doing that. So several of us volunteered to take that agility test, and I was glad I did, because it was a great experience. After taking it, I would tell any female, you need to be in tip-top shape. I personally experienced military guys, Marine guys coming through there, and at the very end just losing it. If they just take lunch especially, just losing it, because it's so challenging. You need to be in the best shape of your life. And you need to prepare, and it's on video, you can find it anywhere. You can actually see it, because I've seen the fire department do it. You need to prepare for what that vigorous challenge is, because it is. Yes, we did cook together. We all switched days, my cook days, and then we switched throughout the week. Sundays was the only day we didn't cook. Fire department's where I learned to cook, because my mother was a housewife, so she pretty much cooked, so I never really learned to cook. But coming into the fire service, you either learn to cook or your food will be in the garbage can. I see a lot of advantages to staying at the firehouse and cooking and eating together if you can. You get a lot more camaraderie from each other. It gives you a chance to talk. When you go out to eat, you don't get a good chance to talk. You're in a restaurant, everybody's looking at you. A lot of people want to know what you're doing there. I think at the fire station, it gives you a chance to unwind. If you've had a bad day and you've had a couple of bad calls, It means a lot to talk to people who understand where you're coming from. And only firefighters can actually understand where you're coming from. I wasn't till I was not a good cook till I got on the fire service. And then I turned into a good cook. Oh Lord, I had several favorite dishes. I loved doing chicken on the grill, but one of my favorites was to take a baked potato and then mix a salad, ground hamburger beef, split that potato open, throw it all salad, ground beef, everything on there, smother it with ranch, whatever the case may be. That was actually one of my favorite meals. Station 15 was not set up for females. Of course, a lot of stations back then were not. Fortunately, Station 15, even though we just run one engine out of it, was to accommodate 2 captains. But with us just running one engine out of it, we only had 1 captain, so we had an extra captain's room. They were joined together by like a Jack and Jill bathroom. So the women had their own room, but yet we shared the same restroom with the captain that was on duty that day. Well, there are some advantages and disadvantages to being out in the open and then having the cubicles. Now, Station 5, I was at Station 5 for several years, we had cubicles. That was one of the first stations to actually have them, the new Station 5 over on Westover. The advantage of having a cubicle, now it don't have a door or a top on it, it's just basically a cubicle like you would work in, is you could get away if you needed to. If you needed just a little bit of alone time, you could get away. People would come in and sit down. You had enough room in there for a bed and a TV and maybe a small chair. Somebody could come in and talk, or you could sit and talk in private if you need, or semi-private if you needed to, or if one of the guys was needing to talk about something that happened on a call or whatever. The big rooms, I actually loved the big rooms except for the guy snoring. So the snoring we would take care of we would run these huge fans, box fans, whatever kind of fan we'd have 5 or 6 of them. It's like a jet engine in there. And it would drown out the snoring. Unfortunately, we had to be careful because we got toned out in the middle of the night. We may not hear the tones for the jet engine running. But I actually liked sleeping in the open like that. We had the Murphy beds. I don't know, we all seemed a lot closer. I think when a retired firefighter comes to the station, and I had this happen quite a bit and I got to meet a lot of people that I didn't even know that had retired either before I got there or not too many years after I had come on in the fire service. You get to learn a lot about what the fire service is actually about. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of, just like with me now, there's a lot of history with me going back to 1979. If I was walking to a fire station today, I would want to tell these people, especially if it's a station that I've been assigned to, what it was like back in the day. I'm sure the kitchens are different, I'm sure the sleeping's different, and retirees have a lot of history. They have a lot of knowledge. And I think that needs to be shared. Young women today in the fire service, if that's what the career path that they're looking for, you have to be ready for a challenge. But to be accepted, you really need to go along. You need to be part of the group. You need to be part of your team that you're assigned to. Whether you like it or not, or you don't like what the captain did, or you don't like what the driver said, or whatever the case may be, if you make an effort just to get along, that carries a lot of weight with these guys. That will carry and get you respect with these guys if you play as a team player. And you've got to be a team player. You can't isolate. You can't object. You've got to be a team player. I remember my first med call.
Okay.
I do remember that one. It was up on Chapman Street. I think we covered for Station 8, Engine 8, I think was out on a call. And we had a gentleman get electrocuted with a jackhammer in his basement. He was trying to redo his basement. He got electrocuted. And we did CPR on him. Unfortunately, we didn't bring him back. But it was it's one I won't forget, because back in the day, we didn't use a bag valve mask. So every time I breathed, he would throw up in my mouth. So that's one of the first calls I will never forget. So I'd breathe him and spit, breathe him and spit. And that's what you had to do. And unfortunately, we didn't bring him back. But I see a great value in fire departments running medical calls. One, you don't have enough EMS units. You didn't back in the day. I'm sure you probably don't now. And then your fire departments, with their 5 minutes response time, and usually you just got a fire station right down the road, I see a great advantage of the fire department running medical calls. 9/11 affected me, hit me pretty hard. I had been up to New York several times. I had visited some of the Manhattan fire stations. I'd got to know some of the guys up there. I can remember exactly where I was that day. I can remember I got a phone call. I was actually on the structural collapse team at the time. In the fire service, I tried to get on every team I could possibly get on, and I did. I was on structural collapse team at that time, and we were on standby to go to New York. And I'd gotten a phone call from my captain and said, "Can you go?" And I said, "Absolutely." I was on the structural collapse team, the high-level rescue team, the confined space team. The only team in the swiftwater rescue team, the only team I didn't get on was hazmat. I didn't really particularly want to be a glow baby. Now, I went to school for it. They sent me down to South Carolina for hazmat training for 2 weeks. And I'll never forget that as well. When I just got back in town, literally had been in town about 2 hours, was when Stoneville got hit by the tornado. And at that point in time, I was still on the structural collapse team, and we got, Chief Staley called me, and she said, "Kathy, I need you to come. We got to go up there and do some search and rescue. Downtown Stoneville literally just got wiped out by a tornado. Can you come?" And I said, "Absolutely." We met at Station 7 and took a team up there to do the search and rescue on the structures that we were able to do that on. Dealing with death, destruction, catastrophic events, I don't want to say you become cold to it. That's really kind of harsh for the lay public, doesn't really understand, but when you see it so much day in and day out, you have to become cold to it. I know that sounds terrible, and I've got friends that tell me that sounds terrible when you say that, but to deal and cope with what we have to in the fire service, and throughout my whole career, you just have to become numb to all of that. Line of duty deaths, they hit home. They hit home. For everybody. Any firefighter. It doesn't matter if it's here or just like the 9 firefighters that died in Charleston in that fire, that furniture company fire. It doesn't matter. Line of duty deaths, just like 9/11 was 343 firefighters that died that day. I actually have that tattooed on my arm as a memory of that because it was so hard. But any line of duty death, no matter Greensboro, Winston, High Point, makes no difference. It affects all of us, and it hits home, and it hits hard. I've had several close calls. I think one of the closest ones that I actually remember was I was at Station 7. We had a house fire, and I fell through the floor. Floor would give way, but I mean, at that point in time, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was so dark, and I fell through the floor, and I just missed an old abandoned well, and it didn't have a cap on it. That was close. Luckily, my air pack got hung on the floor joist. It was the only thing that kept me from going down into the crawl space. But yeah, I think that's... And then I've had several occasions where I've gotten blown off of porches from backdrafts. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. That's the business of it. Well, Captain Saunders, he was a great mentor. Mike Henley, he was my driver. Mike Henley was a great mentor. Matter of fact, I just seen him a couple of weeks ago at the Firefighters Club. Hadn't seen him in years. Lynn Murchison, he was another one of my drivers when I was down at Station 15. And these guys, I want to say, went above and beyond to mentor and guide me in the right direction that I needed to go in and pursue my career in the fire service. There was an accident when I was at Station 5. It was Thanksgiving Day, and a woman had ran a red light, And when she ran the red light, she got T-boned on the passenger side, and on the passenger side was her mother. And it was so strange that day. It was a beautiful Thanksgiving day. Engine 5 was one of the first ones there. The woman was, we got her out. We had to do vehicle extrication. We got her out, got her in the EMS unit. She was talking. She was alive, and she died on the way to home, and she would never recovered. And I'll never forget the look on that woman's face, her daughter, because she was in a hurry. It was Thanksgiving, need to get dinner going. It was just devastating to see that she literally had just basically killed her mother. I mean, literally. Would I do it again? Oh, absolutely. 10 times over. Absolutely would do it again. Would I do anything different? I really don't know. I was 25 years on the truck. My last 5 years I went into the inspections and investigations. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Really had no desire to become a captain because I loved being on the back of the truck and fighting fire. That was my thing. I really did, so I had no desire to move up in the ranks. Would I do anything different? Probably not. My proudest moment was several of them. One was getting accepted into the fire department. 2 was getting through training. And 3 was getting 30 years in. Those are my 3 proudest moments. Significant changes throughout my career was as I got into my career, probably 15 or 20 years in, is when we come out with the MDTs for the fire trucks. Used to be we had to learn territory. You had to know your territory like the back of your hand. And then we got these new computers, and then we got computers in the fire stations. I'll never forget it. I think it was an IBM computer, and all of us would kind of gather around it because we didn't have a clue what they were. I think those were significant changes in the fire service, and it was all for the good. It really was. Everything was paper. We did everything paper trail. Then we were progressing into doing we didn't do logbooks anymore. We was actually doing our fire reports on computers and so forth. Those were huge changes as far as the fire service, and then putting the computers on the trucks was major. The roles of I feel like firefighters now is a lot more technical. Just like the battery electric cars now, we didn't have those back in the day. Now you got to worry about batteries blowing up on you and so forth, and I think it's more challenging now because of how we as a society have progressed and textiles progressed and so forth. I think it's a lot more technical now than what it was back when I was on. No, I was not in the military. I come into the fire service straight out of high school. I feel like the one person that absolutely made a difference in my life, especially as a young firefighter, was Captain Carmen. He mentored me. He was my training officer. Realized the struggles that females were having because Kay and Deanne were right before me. He was their training officer as well. Then he became battalion chief. Fortunately, I was able to serve under him at some point in time in my career, but he guided me, mentored me, actually made a huge impact on my life and my career. My health's been pretty good. I just had major back surgery on my lower back. Other than that, I've not had any major health issues since the fire service. The advice I would give to upcoming firefighters: enjoy it. This is a career, this is a job, this is a profession that will be with you for the rest of your life. Not a day don't go by that I don't think about a call. I don't think about the guys I've worked with. I'll stop at a wreck. Even though I have nothing with me, I'll still stop at a wreck and try to help. It's instilled in you. Enjoy it. So one day you can sit in this chair and do the same thing. The one thing I'd like for the fire department to remember about me was I gave it everything I could possibly give it throughout my whole career. Like for my family to remember the dedication that I gave to the fire service. I chose that career over family at some point in time in my life. And I would like for my family to recognize that that was a choice I made, that I still to this day would make that same choice again. The one thing I miss most about the fire department, I don't miss the calls. I don't miss the death and destruction. I miss the guys. I miss the guys and the camaraderie and sitting around the dinner table. You know, spinning the wheel to decide who's going to wash the dishes, or playing the numbers game that Chief Manus loved to come up with. Whatever game he'd come up with, I miss all that. I miss being with the guys. I really do.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.